Analyze, please give me your attention, analyze the changes that occurred in the 1960s in the goals, strategy, and support of the movement for African American civil rights. Use the documents and your knowledge of the history of the 60s to construct your response. So the question again is, analyze the changes that occurred during the 1960s in goals, strategies, and support of the movement for African American civil rights. Now, it says analyze the changes. Does that mean we are going to debate whether or not changes occurred? No. There were changes, right? Analyze means to break down, right? To break down. So break down the changes that occurred during the 1960s in goals, right? What the civil rights movement wanted to accomplish, strategies, how they wanted to do it, and support, how much support they got from outside groups, government, church, business, whomever, for what they wanted to accomplish. Now, implicit in this question, in my view, is that there were, in fact, changes. Now, let's say that you don't know what those changes were. Now, on some level, I would argue that you could glean that from the documents. Thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, what were the goals? What were the strategies? What was the level of support? That I could glean that from the documents. But before we do that, let's do this. Let's talk about how we got to 1960. Right? So now we're in 1960, and we're talking about the civil rights movement. And as we said before, everyone has some level of familiarity with that. Right? We know we have Martin Luther King's holiday, and around Martin Luther King Day, there's always a smattering of information and ceremonies about Martin Luther King, and we know that Martin Luther King was instrumental in this. We know that. So if we knew nothing else, we would know that, right? But how did we get to 60? Where did we come from? Where would we start to even think about that? Now, I imagine that we could go back to Jamestown. Why? If we wanted to sort of historically go back and address this, we could go all the way back to Jamestown. Why could we go all the way back to Jamestown, Nicoletta? Yes?
Because that's where it all started, with the slavery and blacks not having equal rights.
Okay, so then it all starts with the first Africans being brought to British North America, to Jamestown, and their status sort of being uncertain. We think they were indentured servants / slaves. We could go all the way back to Jamestown, could we not? And we could say, okay, here was where we have the first evidence of African Americans in British North America. But we're not going to do that. Let's go back just to the Civil War. Right? Let's go back to the Civil War. Because we know that eventually the objective of the Civil War was to liberate the slaves. Eventually, we said. We made the point in class that initially the Civil War was specifically not to liberate the slaves. In fact, Lincoln went out of his way to say that the Civil War was not intended to liberate slaves. In fact, on the eve of the Civil War, if you remember, Lincoln was willing to support a constitutional amendment that would have protected slavery where it already existed. I know it was a long time ago, but just for fun, why the transformation? Lincoln is going to say on the eve of the Civil War in his inaugural address in March of 1861 that, look, I said it before and I'll say it again. I will support a constitutional amendment that would protect slavery where it already existed. Right? Now, he says, when the abolitionists push him to make abolition an objective of the Civil War, he resists. Eventually, however, he issues the Emancipation Proclamation, which really sets the stage for and makes abolition a wartime objective. Why the change? Anybody remember? Yes?
Well, he wanted to do the Civil War to protect the Union. Mm-hmm. That was his main goal. In his inaugural address, he didn't want to separate the abolitionists from the other voters that supported him. If he would have went all with the abolitionists, he would have lost a lot of his supporter population.
So I want to stop with something you said. He went, he asked the country to support the war effort to save the Union. Therefore, when he moved to abolition, what must he have thought? That the best way to save the Union would be to do what? Free the slaves, right? Or to make slavery a position in the war. And didn't he say to Horace Greeley in his letter, as he had the Emancipation Proclamation in his pocket, if I could save the Union by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. If I could save the Union by freeing none of the slaves, I would do it. If I could save the Union by freeing some and others, I would do it. But my oft-stated principle has been to save the Union. However, I've always said that I think that slavery is wrong. So even on the eve of emancipation, he's saying the reason I'm doing this is to save the Union. Now that being said, the end of slavery becomes entwined with the Civil War. And as Union armies push through the South and liberate slaves, it becomes clear that slavery is going to end. What actually ends slavery formally in the United States? It's not the Emancipation Proclamation, yes. Not the 15th Amendment. 13th Amendment. Oh, so the 13th Amendment freed the slaves. What did the 14th Amendment do? Just for fun, yes. No. 15th Amendment gave them the right to vote. 14th made them citizens. That's one way to say it. 13th Amendment freed the slaves. 14th Amendment made the slaves, the former slaves, citizens. 15th Amendment gave them the right to vote. Male and females get the right to vote with the 15th Amendment. Black females vote? No. What amendment gave females the right to vote? Yes. 19th Amendment. Good. Now, okay. So now the slaves are free. 4 million of them, right, are free. After the 13th Amendment. Yes.
Why did Lincoln think that abolishing slavery would be...
Pardon me?
Why did Lincoln think that abolishing slavery would save the Union?
Why didn't he think it would? Why did he think it would save the Union? Well, by the Battle of Antietam.